consent of City Council. Attending tonight's meeting is our planning staff, our city attorney, and our planning consultant. At the appropriate time, anybody wishing to address us to speak to a matter should sign in at the other end of the room. Identify yourself, tell us what your concern is. If anybody's got any communication devices that beep, whirl, twirl, or make a noise, please put them on silent or turn them off. First item is roll call. Who's doing it? Kathy?
Mr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Maxwell?
Here.
Mr. Zanzika?
Here.
Mr. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Stratt?
Here.
Mr. Chagel?
Here.
Mr. Allman?
Here.
We have a quorum. Item 2 is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or changes? Mr. Schultz?
Approve it. Move to approve as prepared.
Support by Mr. Maxwell. Roll call, please, Kathy.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Chagel?
Yes.
Mr. Allman?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
The agenda is approved as submitted. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the April 12th regular meeting. Mr. Edmonds?
Move to approve as published.
Support. Mr. Stratt? Roll call, please, Kathy.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Chagel?
Yes.
Mr. Allman?
Abstain.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes. Minutes are approved. This is the item where we have public comment for any item that's not on the agenda tonight. Does anybody wish to speak to an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go on to item 5, BZA report, Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Stratt. Sorry.
There you go. We had a few items. First item was a variance request for a sign that would actually cross the easement as it relates to a gas line easement, and they wanted a variance of 20 feet wide to put a wood fence there to maintain a wood fence, and the rest of it was poured. That was actually postponed. The next variance, which was the St. Joe Chaldean Catholic Church, came before us again. This time it was the previous month it was abstained, and they still don't get it. They're still trying to force that variance and to put in that second road in there. Just at the point where the session took almost 2.5 hours. That's how long that particular item was on. Just unreal, and they're really trying to push it all the way. At the end there, I guess I couldn't resist trying to tell them where the problem was and trying to solve the problem in terms of how I felt it should be done, and that they should have a traffic engineer really on board in order to really assist them, not someone that just is just a draftsperson, whatever. But that was postponed to give them additional time to come back again. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Evans.
Could I just ask a question related to that? Had they met with the homeowners? I know that was one of the things they were going to do, that they were going to meet with the homeowners associations. Did they mention that?
There were several people there, but not as many as what we had. And there were a lot of people that were there last month, the prior month, that didn't show up this month. You know, I mean, it's one of those deals, but several people raised an objection to it. And I concurred with them in terms of evaluating their property. And we can't give them a variance based on that. Yes.
Question, Tom. Did the applicant on his own meet with some of the neighbors? Do you think maybe that was any part why there may have been fewer people at the meeting? I think maybe that's what Mr.
No, I wasn't, but that could be have a.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there was a
No,
conversation.
they were there, and but they were saying that the one thing that they were saying was that they wanted that driveway not to be a drop-off, and to be strictly a drive-in, you know, the new driveway that was going to be on the west side, to actually relieve the traffic and just get the traffic back into the parking area. But they still had that little cubby hole there, and people were saying they're going to slam the doors, they're going to be there, whatever, and there was all kinds of arguments on it, but they're really not I also recommended that they look into a traffic light there. They pay for it and they could have a traffic light, but it's an expensive ordeal to have a traffic light, but just for the weekends when it does occur. And really, it's the holidays that really are the times that they have the worst problem. I recommended that they talk to you again, but, you know.
Thanks, Tom.
You know, and but I don't think they're going to, they're not really, they're gonna try and push it through. I just know they are. And I don't know what our recourse is. They're gonna have to come back before us, I guess, but, at any rate, the other items that were there, the other item was postponed, which was a variance request for a 15-foot residential area. And the other two were approved, which was Suburban Motors. They wanted to go a variance also for a temporary trailer for their Cadillac dealership, which was approved as well. And the other was a variance for the removal of a deck and addition onto a home, which was approved as well. But basically, the meeting lasted almost 12 o'clock, simply because of that particular item on the agenda.
That issue where you, I guess, adjourned it on that 20-foot wood fence for the gas line variance.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was on the ZBA, and Mark too, I remember we talked about that, and we approved it. What was the hang-up this time?
I don't know, but I'll tell you, you know, it's a definition of what is a structure. And is a fence considered a structure? Is that what that is, a concrete fence? And then they've got curbs and roads and everything else going across it. So the definition is something that they were concerned about, the appearance of that being, you know, temporary there, that wood that they had. I had no problem with it. I didn't care one way or the other on that issue. I don't know that a house could be built on the backside, on that empty lot.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts across it quite a ways, but then it goes north, and I'm sure it goes into a subdivision.
No.
I don't know.
Wouldn't let you wrestle with it again next month.
Oh, he's gonna have to go next month.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Trapp, on that? All right. Downtown Development Authority, have you got a report, Brent?
They had a meeting last week, not a lot to report. It was a pretty quick meeting with, I don't believe there's any action items on the agenda. They talked about the budget, annual budget.
Planning and zoning report.
The city council adopted the zoning ordinance on last Monday, a week ago yesterday. And they adopted it essentially as is. There was one change that the planning commission discussed that we just forgot to put in the ordinance regarding use group 6 that we talked about putting in the table of uses. And it was just an oversight on our part. We just forgot to put it in there. So that was added, and which is pretty good for a 318-page document. And, you know, two plus some years to forget one thing is pretty good. And there were some minor typographical errors identified by two of the council members that were made part of the resolution. So it was essentially as is.
Good job.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, I kind of did a quick presentation, and Zach showed how it's web-based and how to maneuver through the ordinance. And I don't even have a hard copy of the ordinance right now because it's web-based and it's so much easier to use. I need one just in case, you know, the site crashes or what have you. But it's just so much easier to use this document than the other one. It's fantastic.
Zach, I talked with Zach earlier today. I was taking my son and daughter-in-law to Metropolitan Airport, and I'm stopping at traffic light coming back, and I noticed we had 3 wind generators out at Metro. Looked like ours. So I called Zach and said, give us an update on what we're doing here in the city with ours, how it's efficient, what it's doing, what it's not doing. Can you give us a few minutes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the DTW wind generators you're talking about are the same company as the ones that are out in front of City Hall. They're made by a company that was formerly known as Mariah Power. Now it's known just as Windspire. That was their main product, and now they rebranded their whole company after it because it's been selling very well. The ones that are at DTW are different only in that they are designed for higher wind speeds, just because they have higher wind speeds out there at the airport, as you might imagine, big, vast, open, wide spaces. And the only difference is the spread of the rotors, But other than that, they're the same unit, and they're just capable of accommodating higher wind speeds and generating electricity. So if you see them, they are the same thing that we have. I had hoped to get up on the screen the reports that we get back from the Windspire themselves, but there's no way to do it if you're more than 200 feet from the Windspire. You have to be that close to it. We have if you're ever interested in seeing it, especially on a Tuesday when I'm here all day, the Windspire has a radio transmitter on it, the ones out front. Each one has a radio transmitter. And we have a laptop dedicated to picking up its signal. It's an old laptop, so it's not real fast, as you might imagine, because nobody's using it, so they give us an old one. But it has a receiver on it, and it's in Brent's office, which is actually one of the closest offices to where they're located. And it sends a constant signal. In fact, it records data every second. And it's been doing that since January when they were installed. And then it saves a spreadsheet every day, and each spreadsheet is like thousands of lines of data. So, trying to sort through that and figure it all out is something of a chore. But
You don't need it that often.
not
Once every 15 seconds is probably plenty.
probably plenty, but it shows you in real time what it's doing, and it's really pretty neat because you can see the exact number of revolutions per minute, exactly how many watts it's generating, yada yada. In the wintertime, when it was a little bit kind of calmer, and we didn't get the kind of consistent wind speeds that we're getting in the spring, as you might imagine. And so we were a little concerned the first couple of weeks because there was not a whole lot happening, and that's where the wobbling comes in. When they were first installed, we had really low wind speeds for like a week, and they would turn a little bit, but they would kind of sway and wobble. I didn't see them. You're like, boy, that doesn't look right. Aren't they supposed to spin this way? And they are, but they actually have a designed, tolerance to wobble in there. So at low speeds, when they're not spinning and they don't get the gyroscopic effect of the rotor, they will wobble a little bit. So that's normal if you see them kind of looking like they're doing this. But once they get up to a couple of hundred RPM, then they start to spin really smooth and even just like imagine a bicycle at speed. And then once they get up to, I can't remember what the number of revolutions per minute is, then they start generating electricity, and they start, in a couple hundred watts, and they get all the way up to, they can generate, they've hit as high as like 1,000 watts they're kicking in at any given moment. So they have had really good spikes of productivity. And if you ever come in, I can show you, on the graph, it'll show you on different dates where it was, the revolutions per minute versus the energy production. And it's really quite interesting. And so you can look at them in aggregate or one or the other. I can isolate a specific week so we can compare, like, well, with the windstorm we had last week, when it was how did they do, that kind of thing. In terms of the cumulative energy they've produced altogether so far, it's sort of a moving target, and the record is not really clear because they've been plugged in and disconnected a couple of times in terms of their contribution to the grid because of ongoing, sort of negotiations with DTE versus how they contribute to the meter issue and all that. So they are relatively new overall. Especially for a facility like this. So I can't give you an overall report on like how much electricity they've produced. The report on the machine said that aggregate they had produced something pretty small. I mean, really small. It was like 56 kilowatt hours, and they're supposed to produce about 2,000 annually, so that would mean they're behind schedule. But I think that record was chopped off at one point and restarted. It doesn't seem to be representative of the entire installation so far, but I can't confirm that. But in other words, when we even, like today, we had some breezes and things, and it was relatively consistent. They were cooking all day, and the last couple weeks in particular, you can see that they were in the production zone all day. The wind needs to be enough to rustle the flags in order to get any electricity out of it. You might see them even spinning sometimes, and we're not getting any juice from them. They need to be spinning fast enough to generate electricity. But, after just a couple of months, they are functional. We're able to track them. They seem to be producing energy, and they seem to be doing okay. We didn't have to pay for them. They were a relatively very minor part, just about 2% of our EECBG grant. So it's interesting. We can get to look at them and observe them and see how they do. But so far, so good. Probably what I'll do is give you a little more in-depth report once we've got a full 4 seasons under our belt, and then we'll probably reevaluate and
Okay, thank you.
So you produce electricity and have it go back to the grid, basically?
It doesn't necessarily it can't go back to the grid. It goes into the building. And so basically, like if we're drawing X units of energy, you know, it's X minus whatever the wind towers are producing. So it just, it decreases the load demand of the building. It doesn't actually go back into the grid. We're not doing any reverse metering because obviously those two
You're
generators,
not generating.
they don't generate anywhere near enough electricity to power this building. So at no time would this building use a less than that is producing. Theoretically, if you had like one big giant mammer jammer out there,
300.
yeah,
100
you
meter.
could theoretically do reverse, you know, net metering at some time. But that's kind of where the DTE relationship gets really murky at the moment. On-site renewable energy generation is not something that they've really been quick to, you know, to embrace and give people money for instance. So the net metering laws are a little up in the air, things are changing, and then their relationship with the owners on how they're actually accounting for that in your billings and all that stuff is still kind of a mess. So.
Mr. Trent, did you have?
Yes, I did. One quick comment about today I stopped by the City Hall about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were really going fast because we had about 25-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
Do they have a variable vane on that to slow it down? Okay, because when I came out of City Hall, they were almost dead stop, and still it's 25-mile-an-hour winds. I was wondering if...
It's funny that you mentioned it because the, you know, we had talked about this a little bit with the zoning ordinance. We had talked about temporary meteorological towers and installations for measuring equipment. That's one of the reasons why they're installed at City Hall, so we can kind of observe their behavior. And the installers and all the applicants that came in that responded to the RFP to install those things really gave us a good education on, you know, micro climates in terms of wind and wind shear and how it works. For instance, the one wind spire we think does better than the other one because it's the one that's slightly interrupted by the overpass. I mean, they're only like 75 feet from each other, and they're a few hundred feet from the overpass, but yet the one that's closer to the overpass sometimes really doesn't, you know, do as well as the other one. Whereas when the winds are shifted and coming from that direction, it seems to do a little bit better. You know, so there's some weird things like that, but there's nothing variable on the equipment itself. The vanes are static, and if you see it windy and they're not moving, it's just because of the direction of the wind or the shear or coming off the building. You'll see, for instance, too, when it's coming from the north, that, you know, the building obviously blocks the wind a little bit.
Mr. Schultz?
Just an observation, Mr. Hudson and I walked in together tonight, and the one closest to the overpass looked like it was ready to go into orbit.
Yeah.
And the one on the east side was barely moving.
Yeah, and they will, and like I spend a lot of time, it's funny because where I sit when I'm talking to Brent in his office, I'm looking out his window and I can see them both, like just perfectly framed like that, and they are never operating at the same speed. And when you look at the software, and it's not, one is not more productive than the other. Net over time, they're almost equal. It's just that, you know, they kind of do this, and they do that all day long, just based on, you know, gusts and bursts of wind and traffic on the freeway and direction of the wind and all kinds of things. They will probably be more consistent if we ultimately would elect to put them up higher. They are designed to be risen up another 30 feet. The way that they're, if you ever go and look at the base, you'll see the base is disproportionately large for the units. And that's because when we went to out to bid for a contractor, we wanted them to bid on a base large enough spec for the 65-foot version. And the actual tower itself that's out there now is designed to just basically be unbolted. You put an extension in and you bolt the old one back on top of it. It's just like a several $1,000s add-on to each unit that we didn't elect to do at the time. But after a year or so, and depending on energy funding and that, you know, we may ultimately elect to plug in the extensions, in which case I would not be surprised if they would grow quite a bit in terms of their production and consistency, just from being up above the building.
Mr. Stratton?
Are you able to determine the return on the investment?
Not quite yet, just because we don't really know, you know, overall what it's been too short of a time. You really kind of need 4 full seasons to sort of get a good idea, and really ideally you need about 18 months to 2 full years of observation.
You're going to be able to do it though.
We will, yeah. I can tell you right now, the return on investment is 100% because we didn't pay for them
100%.
to the city.
Somebody paid for it.
No, I know.
Came out of our tax dollars. I don't care what you say. Somebody paid for it.
Came out of your grandchildren's tax dollars.
Yeah.
But at the moment I can't really tell you the return on investment. You know, ideally it would be somewhere in the
Less than 5 years.
not less than 5 years, probably. No, they have a design capacity of something like 25 years, and I want to say that under ideal conditions they might be somewhere you know, it really depends. I think it might be between 7 and 10 years or something, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah. These ones are not that expensive. These units were not that expensive, so they're not too bad.
I know what Edison is in the business of selling power, not buying power.
I want to say that
Big difference.
I want to say that the average payback under average wind conditions and stuff is supposed to be somewhere around maybe 9 years for those units, but then they have a design life of about 25 years.
I'd like to see that. I'd like-
That's if you have consistent wind of about 9 miles per hour.
A lot of ifs.
But so far, we've been really pleased, and they are actually producing more energy than I thought they would be. So,
Okay, let's go on to item number 8, preliminary site plan review. Number SP 967, the proposed Gaucho Brazilian Steakhouse, 3635 Rochester Road, west side of Rochester, between Troywood and Colebrook, section 22, currently zoned B3, general business district, and P1, vehicular parking district. This is a return from a prior meeting, and Zach, do you want to give us a brief
yes.
overview?
Yep, you're all very familiar with the project. The project hasn't changed. The revised submission that the applicant provided us with does have the benefit of having their full engineering work done. So it was far, far more complete. And all of my previous reservations in terms of submitted information, you'll see at the end of my report, we no longer have any. All the required information has been provided. Just a couple little things to note. All the basic information is the same. The dimensions are the same. We now have more information about landscaping. We have more information about parking. There was a few good things brought up at the last meeting. I don't need to scroll through most of the things in my meeting. I'll point out that for nostalgia's sake, I left in the typo where I mentioned Maple Road instead of Rochester Road. But other than that, it's relatively straightforward. There is the setbacks we now know for sure. It is compliant with the setbacks. The wall on the Colebrook Avenue frontage there maintains a 30-foot setback except for at the very right edge, which is probably just due to a surveying error at one point when it was first done. It's a couple of inches closer than 30 feet, but it's not being affected by the project anyway, and it's a legally existing nonconformity. So it's all set there. In terms of parking, we had some questions about parking at the last meeting. You recall some inconsistencies, what we perceived to be inconsistencies in the plan, and then there was questions that Mr. Tagle brought up, for instance, about the building's capacity. Well, the building's capacity calculations do show that there's enough capacity to accommodate the seating that they propose, and now the parking calculations have been revised. Basically, they're providing as much seating as they can to, given the constraints of the parking that they can put on the site. That's basically what they've come up with. Their building code would allow them theoretically to have more people in the building, but our parking regulations don't. So they're in a situation where they're providing 127 spaces, 97 existing, 30 proposed. They're maxing out the parking on the site. This is basically going to allow them to have the 150 seats of capacity in the primary initial dining area. And then you recall they had 2 areas they had referred to as private dining areas. They're really just additional wings of dining that'll be doored off for private meetings, or they can be expanded for general dining. And there's, should say 80 divided by 2, 40 spaces plus 1 employee. Ends up being 127 spaces. We're very satisfied that the provided and designed parking meets exactly with the capacity that they're proposing for the building, and I'm very comfortable with the parking calculations. Site access, circulation, natural resources, all that the same. The landscaping, there was a bit of a question about the content of the landscaping plans they were building into the plan. They are showing additional new trees located within parking lot landscaping islands, green belt trees, some landscaping around the building. There's 17 new trees on the site. There's a collection of existing trees that are going to be preserved. They do meet the minimum green belt requirements. The minimum landscaped area, full calculations are provided now that we have full engineering, and it does greatly exceed the, it's more than double, or it's approximately double the requirement. And we no longer have any reservations. There's no missing information, and it's compliant with the ordinance, so we recommend you approve the preliminary site plan. Oh, yes. One last thing. There were questions about the rooftop screening, and the applicant did provide some additional documentation about rooftop screening, which Brent has got up on the screen now. These are manufacturer's cut sheets for the design of the system that they're intending to use. And then further on, there's a drawing showing how it would be, how it would appear in the building, I believe. There you go. So you can see their intended location of rooftop mechanical and how it would be screened.
There's one more.
Right, that being the west elevation, the rear of the building.
And we received these after the packets went out, so we didn't have a chance to distribute them, so we put them on the PowerPoint.
Mr. Schultz?
First of all, if the building code would allow more seats than our parking regulations, I'm assuming that in the future, if the applicant were to come back and say, we've never had problems with parking, we could give them a waiver,
Yes.
as we do for everyone else.
And that's even easier under the new ordinance, the flexibility in parking is.
And the other question I have is, looking at the landscape plan, there is an arrow indicating that the driveway under the porte cochere is one-way westbound. How are people going to get out of the parking lot if that is a one-way drive? And is it wide enough to be two-way?
I can't tell from the drawing. What is the dimension of that? Do you know the?
It's 20 foot wide.
It's 20 feet wide, so it doesn't
22.
meet our minimum regulations for a two-way drive, but it,
You can get around it.
you could, you certainly could. It does look like it goes around and you would just drive to the west end of the property after that last landscaping island, then you would come back and circulate
Back up.
back out in front there.
Could that island be reduced?
Excuse me, wait for the presentation, and I think you should tell the audience and us
Pointer.
who you are.
Okay, we don't.
Sorry.
Oh, we don't have a pointer.
Hold on.
That's okay, I can just get up and point to it. So you would come in here, directly off the site, drop off. This is a two-way drive here, all the way through here, so you would come through and then go back out that way.
My only assumption is, or my only comment would be, if I'm pulling into a restaurant and I stop to drop somebody off because it's raining, when we leave, I'm gonna go back under that cover to pick those people back up again. And if it's a one-way drive, I'm gonna be picking my people up the depth of handicap parking spaces out in the middle of a parking lot. That just seems like a,
Well, you could still circulate back this way. If you're parking, you could just make a
come
mile
on,
that
do
route.
you really think anybody's gonna do that?
I don't know.
I
but
don't. I think they're gonna drive through a driveway that's too narrow for two cars. That's just my opinion.
So are you saying you'd prefer to see this be 24 feet wide?
Yeah, and accommodate cars in both directions, or however wide it needs to be for a covered drop-off. It may have to be wider than that for drop-off if you're thinking about car doors being swung open and that kind of thing.
Well, this is a landscape island here. We can talk to the applicant about that. I'm sure that there's probably wiggle room for a couple feet on either side of the actual pavement, because this is, the cover comes out to here, I think, and then you've got, a couple supports. This is a curved island there, and then you've got the sidewalk there. My guess is that it would probably be a simple fix.
Yeah, my observation is if you have a covered drop-off, it seems like you should have a covered pickup also, because if the
Sure.
weather's inclement, people are gonna pull under that cover to pick their guests up also.
No, it's a good observation. I would suggest we talk about it with the applicant.
Any other questions of Mr. Brannigan? Mr. Sanzica?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to see this here. It's, we're looking forward to this type of restaurant and development along Rochester Road. I was just curious, Mr. Brannigan, if the applicant had looked at any, our new zoning ordinance allows for variances in landscaping that they provide some stormwater management. And I don't see anything on here at all, and I'm just curious if they looked into that at all, if they were provided that option.
I don't know that they looked into it because they were given a preliminary okay from the engineering department early on that the existing detention on the property was going to be a parking lot detention, would meet the engineering department's standards. So you can ask the applicant that, but we did not. It wasn't a topic of discussion between us and them, although we did mention it at the last meeting, and we asked about it initially in our first review, but no, there's no indication for me that they had considered adding anything in there.
Anyone else? Mr. Stratton?
Just a comment on the 24-foot versus 20-foot. The rationale with the 24-foot wide is not necessarily for the two-way traffic. It is primarily for people pulling in and out of the parking lot itself, so that they can manipulate your driveway and your residence is 16 foot wide, or the garage door is 16 foot wide typically. In this case here, I see no problem in what they've done. This is my personal opinion, and everyone is entitled to theirs, but, you know, I can see where there's a wide enough sidewalk there for anyone swinging the door out or whatever. There's plenty of room there. To me, I see no problem with the way that it's done right at this point.
I would add that you know, we've got parking spaces that are, you know, 9.5 feet wide, 9 feet wide, 10 feet wide all over, and 2 vehicles fit there. So I mean, technically with the width there should be. It looks like the paved width though is only, I don't think it is 20 feet. I believe it's only, I'm looking at the drawing up close now, and I don't believe it is 20 feet. It looks to me like it's about 15.5 feet. It never occurred to me to think of it as a two-way drive just because it wasn't, you know, proposed like that. I believe if you look at sheet, page 16 and 27.3 of 6, you can see clearly on that drawing that it's 15 feet 6 inches. That's the site plan drawing. Is that right?
Which one?
All of them. This paved area right here, this drive is 15 feet 6 inches, right? This is not 20 feet wide.
Now, why don't we do this? The applicant, why don't you come up and speak in the microphone, and then maybe you can address Mr. Brannigan.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, just move it out.
Good evening. My name is Robert Kerr. I'm with Metro Group Architects, and we've applied for the approval of this today. I'm sorry, I don't see the total on our drawings for that. The intent was to have enough room for folks to come out of the building and not be involved with the vehicle passing through. There is enough room for a vehicle to be at the curb and another to pass by if we needed to have it. We could increase the width if that's what you'd like to do, but it was always intended to come in and go around and then back out. If you were to pick somebody else up, we had intended to do the same thing. You bring a car around and to the front door, go back around and then out. That was our planning, just to give you a background of what we expected to do. We like the idea, and the porte cochere is specifically there for the idea of inclement weather for be able to drop off and have people come through. So that was the thinking of it. But we could widen it if there was a need to do that.
As long as you're up there, do you have any other comments you'd like to give, or pretty much rely on what you said before and what Mr. Brannigan's discussed with us?
I think that we're very excited to be here, and that's one of those things that I'd like to say. One thing that's been very refreshing to me, coming from Ann Arbor and doing business in Ann Arbor, I'd actually like to commend all of you folks for all your help on this project. It's been terrific. I don't think I could have gotten this done this fast. I know I couldn't in Ann Arbor, and I actually have told my clients I'd like to write an article in the Ann Arbor News that Troy's open for business, which is a really nice professional thing I'd like to say. So, you know,
And we're making an effort to do that, too.
I know you are. And
Thank you for
We
coming.
appreciate that. It's noticed. We hope you like the building. We're excited to be here. If there's any more questions, I'd love to answer this.
Any questions? Mr. Kerr, Mr. Trent?
On page 3, it says 15.6 feet. So it is on page 3, so you do have a restricted area there. I would suggest if you're going to make that a one-way, you identify it as such with signage.
It is.
No, I'm talking signage, not just the arrow.
It has signs.
Is it? Oh,
Yep.
okay, I didn't see the signage. Okay.
And
If you do that, then I have no objection to it.
Mr. Trent, go ahead, and then Mr. Schultz.
Okay. Being someone who's been involved in the sign industry for 38 years, I find that people don't read. Some people don't read.
It's a very successful business.
On a rainy day,
They look at her.
on a rainy day when they can't read signs because their wipers are going, they're the last thing they're going to do is read a sign. They're going to try to come back the same way they came and push their way into that small area. I would just say, from a business standpoint, not so much technical code, et cetera, but from a business standpoint, I would like to make my guests feel as comfortable as possible, and I'd give them that kind of latitude. I'd move, you know, if possible, I'd get rid of all that greenery area there. You don't really need, I don't think it's necessary, and make it two ways. Make it specifically two ways, because you're going to get people trying to make it two ways regardless if you want it that way or not.
They're going to lose parking if they do that.
They're going to lose with parking.
Mr. Schultz?
One other question
If it
for
came in.
Brent or Zach. Looking at the same page 16 of 27 in our,
Yeah.
why is there no sidewalk from the west end of the porte cochere out to the driveway on the west? Don't we normally insist on a driveway so that guests are not walking in the parking lot to get to and from a building?
Well, there is the driveway that goes across the island that is just to the south of the 15-foot, 6-foot.
Okay, my question is, the parking behind the building to the west. If someone parks there, they're going to walk in the parking lot to get to the front door of the building? Rather
Okay, I see
than on
what
the
you're talking
sidewalk?
about. I see what you're talking about now.
I thought we normally required a perimeter sidewalk so that people wouldn't walk in the parking lot.
We often do. You know, you could be one there. They have more than enough width there because it's not two-way there, or, you know, if it was not two-way there. But, and it wasn't provided so that they could have enough room for parking there, to have a two-way parking traffic circulation there. Because if you do the 2 24 and then the 2 minimum 19-foot parking spaces, that's all the space that they have there. I don't know. I guess because there's a doorway there.
Sure.
I don't know.
Mr. Maxwell?
Well, after having dropped off elderly parents for a number of years, I think having a two-way there may cause more congestion and problems. I like the one-way. After, you know, I've dropped off people using wheelchairs. It requires extra room. It requires more than one lane. If you add in cars coming from the other direction into that drop-off area, I just see potential problems with that as well. So there is no perfect way of doing this, but it's a preference. I think people get used to the layout of businesses and churches and other venues that involve dropping people off, and they'll get used to this as well. I think the plan as presented is just fine.
Ma'am, if you'd like to address us, please go up to the microphone and
Okay.
give us your name and make your comments.
Okay.
You can do it now if you like.
I would say that if it was something that you felt strongly about, Mr. Schultz or any of the other members of the commission, if you wanted to talk about the inclusion of a sidewalk coming around that south, are you talking about that? You're talking about the area along the south facade of the building,
Right,
connecting
yes.
the west parking lot to that, yeah. There's, you know, it's a 24-foot wide lane there for two-way circulation, but we've got a one-way that feeds into this. So the only way you'd be going two-way is if you were doubling back to just hit one of these last 4 parking spaces right there. You could theoretically make that entire lane one-way and then have a walk that comes out to restrict the size of that, you know, so that it was like 20 feet or something like that. That would probably be a much simpler fix than making it a two-way lane there, especially given that now that I see that it's only 15.6. Mr. Krent's suggestion talking about eliminating that landscaping area is probably feasible. You would have to have a sort of a sharpish S-turn coming out of there, and then I know that the owner, I know that she does. I'm sure she's going to address it. I know she feels strongly about sort of the entrance presence and all that, and I think that landscaping might be part of it. She can obviously speak to that. But there's a variety of solutions here, I think. So, you know, maybe we can let them talk a little bit and then
Why don't you tell
take the
us?
temperature of the
You just
commission.
said,
Okay,
I,
you did a brilliant job,
They
Zach.
know me, they know, you were not here last time.
I wasn't.
I mean, you only turn and lane turn on the owner. No, that's my husband, Mark, you know, God wish you. And I just want to say that I agree with Mark. I really don't want two ways there. If I had good signs, like I said, the pretty girls saying, come here, you know, in the rain with the thing, because today we get people with the umbrella in our parking lot. That's why I told him the first thing when he started building, I said, I want the little thing that people can go. And I think making that two ways, again, to have people with wheelchairs and things like that, it's so much easier, So I'll put as much sign as you want, make sure that people understand that they're gonna have to go around because it's too crowded, you know, and we see that in our parking lot. It's like you do create like this natural flow. If you're gonna have people dropping, it's like, and you know, if anything, I'm Brazilian, I'm the one who have the tendency to try to go around. My husband is American. He never does it. He always follow the rules and go around and does it. So you guys are pretty good. Say if I say it's one way, make it one way. So it's, I don't know, I see an accident happening, a door opening, you know, and I just love the way it is. I would not change anything. I loved him. I read his report and everything was approved because I didn't see he was not cutting any corners, and I told you that's what he's here for, to do the best. I like just the best, nothing less than
Mr.
that.
Tagle.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
First, a technical question to Mr. Brannigan. If that's a one-way drive, and it's narrowed down to something less than 24 by a sidewalk, and the parking remains at 90 degrees, is it enough of a drive to get out of a 90-degree parking stall, or do those spaces need to be angled? And that which would reinforce the one-way?
The angled would definitely reinforce the one-way, and there's definitely enough room and flexibility to do that at that location. That might be a really good suggestion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you know, I mean, you without getting angles and stuff out, I mean, typically you do have enough space to technically get out if it's only, I mean, you probably, I mean, you prepared plans, you know, I've seen them as narrow as 20 feet, but it's depending on, you know, nowadays some cars are so darn big, it's not comfortable.
Well, I think if you're set on a one-way drive and you don't feel that it's going to deter people in the circulation in your property, I would recommend that you take that one-way approach all the way down to where it can become a two-way drive, which is really, excuse me, down to that island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right at the far. There we go. Yeah.
So if we, excuse me, if we do that, we'll probably lose one parking space.
Yeah.
You might.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You might not, because you could, you know, I think you could shave this, and you know, you might be able to wiggle it in there. But yeah, these would be slightly angled, and just so everybody and everybody at home too gets it. We have the idea to connect this with a sidewalk here, so you have full perimeter circulation for pedestrians, which would slightly narrow this, meaning that if we had these on a slightly angled orientation, they don't even need to be a full 45 degrees. They just need to be slightly angled. So you know, I'm guessing, Mark, that you could.
I can do that. I mean, one of the first layouts that I had of the space was angled parking as we came through there, but I was trying to keep as many spaces as I could. And I'm pretty confident I'm going to lose one.
Even I can drive a Lincoln, the state Lincoln, they have like
Right.
cameras, believe me, I hate parking.
Right.
It's like
We're
today,
just,
people have the parking thing, the V card, they have cameras.
Oh, I know. We're just a
So,
little bit concerned
I
if this
can
is
do
a
it.
narrow space here and you have pedestrians walking there. Actually, I kind of have that concern regardless of whether or not there's a sidewalk here. So, you know, now that I think about it, you've got pedestrians walking through there. That, the planning commission has the ability to give you the flexibility for one less parking space.
We'd be happy to angle those and put the sidewalk in as long as you're okay with if we lose one space.
I don't have a problem. I'm not so sure you will. I mean, you've got a lot of island here just to the west of the cover, the overhang. You know, if you clip the corner of that a little bit, I don't know that it would affect the landscaping per se. I don't think your entrance development would be changed.
That would be fine with us. I think it's a good solution.
Right.
Mr. Edmonds.
It also emphasizes to the people driving that you know, it is a one-way.
It's a one-way.
And I, very frankly, I wouldn't even, the parking spaces are on the opposite. You could, if you had them angled as you're going out, you know, that would even, it's a turnaround, it's a cycle.
At the risk of, you know,
Right.
overdoing it here, I would think maybe another good addition would be to put, if you do agree to that, and that's what the planning commission approves, and ends up having these here, and this is one-way circulation coming out this way essentially, then, is maybe having a do not enter sign here rather than just here.
Right.
So move it to this island so that people can see do not enter, and then they can make their turn here to recirculate, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Are we ready for a resolution?
to make a comment.
Mr. Stratton?
The only concern that I have, and I would agree with the angle parking, is because it's abutting a 90-degree parking, the space actually is encroaching into that 24-foot space. But it does solve the problem, or it does actually create the one-way access. So it does identify that, but I don't think we can reduce that to do anything with respect to putting an additional sidewalk there. I don't think would work.
We do have, there is, the maneuvering lane width is reduced for angled parking, although I can't remember it off the top of my
I
head.
understand that, but the real problem is that because you're at an angle, and when you go a diagonal parking, you normally have butt to butt.
Yeah.
In this case, you're not butt to butt, so you have a larger distance. So you are encroaching into the 24 feet,
Yeah.
even though it's diagonal.
They're probably, I would guess that they're probably going to encroach, but it depends on the severity of the angle.
I'm just concerned
Yeah.
that I don't think you can do both. Have angle parking and put a sidewalk across there is what I'm saying. I don't think that'll work. But that's something you'd have to draw out to see if you can do it, but I don't think you can. It would be a 30-degree parking, I'm assuming, 30-degree angle that you'd want.
It could be. It wouldn't have to be necessarily that
More than
severe.
that.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't want it more than that. It could even be less than that, though. I mean, it wouldn't have to be as severe as 30%. It could be, I mean, it's you know,
The less you go, the wider you have to have, closer to 24 foot.
Exactly, yeah, the ordinance has, well, the ordinance has got, the old ordinance has got gaps in it. It's like, from 0 to 30 and 30 to 45 and 45
Right.
or whatever it is. So if he can accomplish the same objective with like 15 or something, even that would be okay, I would think. We can work with him on that, though. I mean, that, like you said, those sorts of things can be,
Yeah.
you know.
His main restriction is to the south, where he's got that property line there, and then he's going north on that, so that's the restrictive area, 24 feet going north. That's his restrictor. I can see how you came up with it.
Mr. Edmonds?
Can I just ask a somewhat unrelated question? I'm assuming you're going to have valet parking. So I think that even is more, because I know most places that have valet parking, they come back in the way you came in, and so the passengers can get in and everything. So I personally like the one way. I think that's a good solution.
Gentlemen? Someone got a resolution to make? Mr. Tagle?
Be resolved that the preliminary site plan approval pursuant to section 03.40.03 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Gaucho Brazilian Steakhouse located on the west side of Rochester between Troywood and Colwood, 3635 Rochester Road in section 22 within the B3 zoning district be granted subject to the following conditions. That the parking immediately south of the building be revisited or redesigned to consider angled parking and a sidewalk added to connect the entry point of the building to the sidewalk to the west of the building.
Support by Mr. Schultz. Any more discussion on the motion? Resolution, Mr. Sevena?
Just thinking, can we put some wiggle room in there for a lost parking space? In the event that there's a parking space lost.
Sure. It would give the planning department discretion to eliminate one parking space if necessary with the redesign.
Is it acceptable to the second? It is acceptable. All right. Kathy, the roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who supported?
Mr. Schultz?
Thank you. Mr. Maxwell? Mr. Sanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Longman?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krenn?
Yes.
Congratulations, it's unanimous. Welcome to Troy.
Thank you. Can I take my picture? I forgot last time. I told you I can carry a sign.
Thank you, everybody.
What's the schedule?
Yesterday?
Well, we're looking forward to the grand opening, to be invited, so it's,
It's
December.
December. The idea is December.
The 5th would be a good day.
Birthday? You guys can try our mail club, you know? Take a picture of everybody. My husband is shy, I'm not. See, I need to send invitation, need the names, you know.
You represent them well.
There you go.
Jeez.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
very much.
I worked really hard to get here, I need to document it.
Welcome to Troy.
Thank you. Good night.
Item number 9 is public comment for items on the current agenda. Seeing no one in the room except the planning commission, I'll take it that no one has a comment. And we're down to planning commission comments. Let's start with Mr. Sanzika.
Well, not being here last week, I have to say I was a little disappointed in hearing about the transit center. And I know, and I understand there was a zoning issue, not a zoning, but kind of possibly a land acquisition issue that created the problem. And I don't know if there's been any movement on that since then, but I'm really disappointed. We worked awfully hard to get it to where they're at, and unfortunately, losing the grant and so forth, that's still the case. To say the least, I'm very disappointed, and I know everyone has worked hard to get where they're at.
Do you know that was on the 6 o'clock news?
That's a go-ahead.
That the city is going to continue, Troy is going to continue to pursue that project.
Today?
Yeah, 6 o'clock tonight.
Joe? Mr. Seven?
Yeah, the grant isn't lost yet.
Oh, good. That's
We're
great.
still pursuing the money. I mean, it's almost $10 million, $10 million sitting on the table, and we, we're still gonna try to get the grant.
Oh, great, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, the site plan and everything would have to change significantly because it wouldn't take into account the property in Birmingham, but that, there's still some
Well,
possibility.
and it could go a lot quicker if we're just dealing with one planning commission.
How are they gonna get across?
Well, there's not enough room to do the whole plaza with the
tunnel
The
would
tunnel
not fit,
anymore
so it'd have to
wouldn't
be
fit
a
because
feet
there's
of
no-
bridge.
so we will see.
Will we have the right of way to put the plank or the onboard?
Preliminary sketches indicate that there's room.
Oh, wow, okay.
That's great.
Mr. Ullman?
I think I didn't quite catch how much of the transit center are we going to be able to salvage under optimal conditions? If things, give any idea?
How much of the trans, I mean, there's still the
are we
property.
still going to be able to get to the Park and Troy and get to the Birmingham side or not?
There's preliminary sketches that indicate that a bridge can go over and access the right of way for a ramp.
The problem, of course, is the railroad doesn't want to allow that. That's been the holdup previously, right?
No, they'll support, there's room for the bridge. I mean, there's gotta be room obviously for trains to go under, but there's gotta be, there's an airport nearby, there's high tension power lines above, so that it's gotta work. But we can't, it hasn't been designed yet.
Mr. Edmonds?
No comment other than, I'm assuming the lawsuit still, hearings on for May 25th.
Mr. Schultz?
Nothing.
Mr. Cagle?
Tonight, one of the comments when we talked, Phil brought up about stormwater management on this property, and Zach, your response was engineering said what they had was okay. It reminded me that we have talked about having some type of dialogue across departments about what we're trying to do and what the new ordinance is trying to do. Is that something we can start to, now that the ordinance is moving forward, that we can start to have that dialogue and see if we can have an understanding so that when they go to engineering, we're both singing off the same song sheet?
Absolutely. I think the timing's right for that. And I don't recall, we talked at the counter, we talked preliminarily, a couple times at the counter. Yeah, I'm sure there was some discussion about detention, and this is a little bit difficult site because the parking lot's there, and they're just talking about, basically utilizing the existing parking lot, and the site is essentially 100%.
Yeah, this may not be the site, but all I'm
impervious.
saying, the point was made, and
Yeah.
it just kind of resurrected in my mind that
Yeah, I can tell you that we had some discussion about, I don't know if we talked about this at the last meeting, about outdoor seating in front of the building, between, did we talk about that last meeting?
Yes.
They're outdoor dining, and they can't do it because of health department requirements. When the way they serve the meat, it's on these like sticks, skewers, sticks. Technical term, sticks. And when they leave the building with the skewer, with the meat on the skewer, they can't return with it. So it just makes it impossible with their model. Otherwise, they would have been open to it. So I mean, I do recall having that dialogue. I'm sure we talked about detention, but I can't remember.
Mr. Schultz?
They could have, however, put an outdoor area for people having a cocktail while they wait for a table, because it was specified that they have lots of people that wait for tables. And without serving food out there, they could have had an outdoor area for cocktails.
And, you know, maybe I think it was you, Mr. Schultz, you raised a good point. Maybe, hopefully, this business is going to be wildly successful, and that's something they'll think about when they're so successful. They've got people with nothing to do waiting that they can do that. She seems to be very enthusiastic about having a successful establishment.
Mr. Krantz? Mr. Stratt?
Yeah, I just wondered what two items. One was the signage. Where do we stand on that?
We, not to speak for Brent, but we have talked about, along with stormwater and along with da-da-da-da-da-da,
Yeah.
those are all on the immediate to-do list, but, the ordinance will be, the zoning ordinance will be enacted and fully, in action in 2 days. So then, I guess maybe we'll take Friday afternoon off and then we'll start on But I would imagine, Brent's department is going to lead the sign ordinance. I'm not sure what our role is going to be in it, but it's clearly it's right in the crosshairs as one of the next things to get attention.
Yeah, it's a high priority of the city. It's a high priority of the planning commission, and it's we gotta move on it. We've just literally been up to our eyeballs on the zoning ordinance, but now it's time to roll up our sleeves and do the sign ordinance. There's some other ordinances we have to do as well. We have to look at. We have to look at fees. There's a number of other ordinances, but we didn't want to invest a lot of time in the other ordinances, not knowing what the status is going to be of the zoning ordinance. Was it going to be dramatically revised? Was it going to move forward as is? We didn't know. So now we know, and now we need to hit the ground on the signs.
One of the things that sparked this thing with me is that there's been a lot of, I guess there's a huge building that's going to be actually covered, just like the Chrysler building, with respect to the signage that they have on our whole building. What I'm concerned about is we have an awful lot of buildings that could actually conform to that kind of an operation. I want to make sure that hopefully that we at least look at that, in my opinion, at least look at that kind of a graphics, as well as what you see right now in Big Beaver with the other items that they plastered onto their walls. I don't know, I think it was that the glass wall?
Spandrel panel, yeah.
It wasn't spandrel rather, if it was a spandrel. The other thing that I happened to drive parallel to Big Beaver on a north road, just west of Livernois, and I just noticed there was a house that actually was not really a house, but it was huge, and it seemed like it was designed. It's not totally occupied now, but it doesn't look like it was intended ever to be a residence. And there were a lot of like industrial trucks there as well. I'm wondering, what is our building department doing in reviewing these drawings? Are they raising a flag or anything like we had that big monster garage that we had? It conforms, but can we raise a flag, or do we have anything that we can control that?
I don't know anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Which, pardon my ignorance. What I would suggest you do is call myself or call Paul Evans in the morning, and we'll investigate it, and we'll let you.
It's actually the water over the dam right now. The house is built, everything is pretty well, except it's vacant. I can take photographs of it if that's what you'd like, but it seems to me that we got to really somehow someone has to use when they see something like that, raise a flag. I would think.
How old is it? Is it new?
It's relatively new, yeah.
Last couple of years, anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Huh.
I can't even comment on it because
No,
I
I
don't
know
see
you
it.
can't.
What I would suggest is give us an address and if you
Yeah.
want to talk about it at the next planning commission meeting, we can.
We'll look into it.
Yeah, we can look-
And I know the spot you're talking about, we'll
Yeah.
check it out and see.
Yeah, well, that's one thing you asked, if we spot something to notify.
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
No, absolutely, that's
Call
exactly
you
right.
and let you know about it, whatever, but.
524-3359.
I'm more concerned about, can we somehow put that into our ordinance? I don't know how, you guys are the experts, but,
Well, maybe, if thinking about that particular case, maybe after we take a look and see what some of the, you know, the issues with it might be firsthand, then we could probably have a more informed discussion about it, but, you know, you never know.
I'm sure it complies with all of our ordinance regulations as far as setbacks and all the rest of the stuff, but the function itself, it's obvious it's not a residence.
Well, we'll have to see if there's any,
Yeah.
home occupation.
I'll get more information. I'll
Yeah,
give it to you.
I'd appreciate
That's
that.
fine.
We'll look into it.
I don't want to hold
And,
everybody up, I'm sorry.
That's all right, Mr. Maxwell.
Okay.
Al?
No comments.
I've got none. Brent?
Pretty exciting to see a restaurant on Rochester Road
Yeah, it is.
application.
Mhm.
That's a real shot in the arm, especially that type of restaurant. That's pretty exciting.
Do they have a restaurant in Northville?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's
In the
very
township.
successful.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say that one thing I'm going to try to do is when we have the digital ordinance done, is that I'm going to have, it'll be on the desktop of these computers at the
Oh, that'd be
meetings,
great, yeah.
so that
Yeah.
you can open the ordinance and then click through it. If we want to look at a provision, I can tell everybody, click on this link, and then we can all be looking at the same thing at the same time, too.
Is it on the
Um,
city website already?
It's the draft version that you last looked at, the one that went for public hearing for the board is, but not with the typographical changes and stuff, but it will be, obviously, by the adoption date, and it'll be up in the permanent link.
Right.
You know, the ordinance text and map will be replaced with the new. We just have to finish making those last couple formatting typographical changes. And we worked on the zoning map today. There was a few little minor things with the zoning map, but it'll be up there. But yeah, you'll have that. And then one last quick thing about the sign ordinance and just like the zoning ordinance being outdated, the sign ordinance is outdated not only in like our tastes and what we think is the right thing for legibility and all that, it's also technologically outdated too. So like when you're talking about, you know, like you're talking about skinning windows and you're talking about, you know, houses and buildings and that, you know, there's been, and LED signage is a big, huge thing, you know, changeable copy signs, electronic signs.
Insurance.
Yeah, you know, a lot of those things, and you know, Don Warman at our office, Dick's partner in particular, has done lots and lots of work on like changeable copy and electronic signage regulation and that in the last few years. And you'd be amazed at some of the technology that's out there and coming down the pipe. So the new sign ordinance will have to necessarily address some of those issues. So anyway, yeah.
And we have, if I may, we have a business here in town already that has LED signage, and about half the time it says, advertise here, call this number. And it's a pretty nice source of revenue for the business, because their sign is above it, and there's a changeable LED below it, so we rent the LED sign out to other people.
One last thing that I want to say, speaking of LEDs, is as you go out to your car tonight, take a look around the City Hall campus if you haven't already. A lot of the lights, not all of them, but a lot of the lights, but the parking lot that we all park in has been converted over to LEDs just in the last week or so. I think they've done with the project. So at any rate, we're doing that. And just found out today, just to use up some of the remaining money in the grant, we're gonna, you know, be expanding the LED project possibly even a little bit more to include some of the roadway lighting and the fire stations. All exterior lighting was converted to LED. The entire City Hall campus, some of the roadway lighting around here, lots and lots. So a big chunk of the energy grant ultimately ended up being invested in LED lights, which is one of the most rapid paybacks when you're in terms of payback. You're talking about just a couple of years on most of those. So I'm pretty excited to see how it's coming out. Some of the wall packs are not all done yet, so like half the building is LED wall packs, half of it is still the old ones. But it's pretty exciting. It's neat.
With that, we're adjourned.
The post